peripheral lithiasis and attacks of renal colic.
Thank you very much.
He has hammer toes, too.
You were a very serious, sympathetic young doctor, weren't you?
Yes, he had to be, you know, because you had to have a basis of truth in that story, because he didn't do anything particularly funny. The funny things happened to him.
Yeah.
It was tremendously rewarding and changed the whole entire course of my career from that very day.
Although, I've heard recently that Hunted is showing in the arts theatres in New York.
Yes, it still runs in America.
There, so that's funny, yes. So you did 3 Doctor pictures in a row.
Not in a row.
Not in a row, no.
There was a 2-year gap between each one. But I did in a row, which was very marvellous for me. I did 7 pictures in a row with Ray Thomas and Betty Box. Now, they had carefully worked out a plan for me, with myself in mind, that between the 3 Doctors that we were to do, we'd do sort of light romantic parts. We did Tale of Two Cities and all this.
Yes. Yes, things like Spanish Gardener, Campbell's Kingdom, where you were in the Rocket.
That's right. We tried a bit of everything, so that every range came in, which was a tremendous experience.
Isn't this an awful lot, 3 or 4 pictures in a year?
Money-wise, it isn't. There was a time, I believe, when my father called me up and said, "You're in Brighton in 17 cinemas," or something. That is too much.
You appeared in plays until just about 2 years ago, didn't you?
Yes, I always tried to do that. Yeah. The organisation used to let me out for a play every 2 years or every 3 years when it was possible to do so.
Why did you give that up?
I gave it up, really, because I did too much filming, and the strain of doing a play, I found after 3 years filming was enormous. And I always chose, for some reason best known to myself, jolly difficult parts to play in very gloomy plays.
Yes.
And it was double strain, you know, and it was too much to do.
So you're finished with the stage now?
For the time being, yes.
Talking about the Doctor, 4 or 5 years after the Doctor in the House series, you made another Doctor picture, Doctor's Dilemma, based on the Bernard Shaw play.
Yes.
That was very different.
That was quite a different thing, and that, I think, was the film of all that I really bust to do. I was longing to do that. Everybody advised me not to. They said it would be a box office flop and poison and all that sort of thing. What happened, of course, was what we rather envisaged would happen, was that the moment the film came out, people flocked to see it because they thought it was another Doctor in the series, you see. And a great many seats went clacking backwards after about a quarter of an hour of that little number, because they went back and asked for their money.
Yes.
But, you know, it was not a comedy, but it was the most rewarding film I've ever done from every point of view, critically, and from at last, I said to you just now that I never had an acting part. That was one I did have.
Yes, there's the death scene in that. I think that's one of the best scenes you've ever made. The fan following you'd built up to that time, they didn't like this picture, did they?
No, they didn't like it. You've got to remember there are a group, I mean, there are followers, there are fans, and fanatics.
Yes.
The fanatics didn't like it at all. The fans weren't too keen on it, but out of loyalty came. The followers still came. You always have followers, you see. And that's the hard core of your audience, if you're a film actor or a film star, if you like to use that phrase, that stay with you whatever you do. Yeah. But the fans are a little different, they vary, and the fanatics only stick with you, like the barnacles, you know, for so long.
Of course, playing an artist was obviously not new to you. You were trained as an artist originally, didn't you?
Yes, but I'm not that amoral. I mean, this is... there are artists and artists.
I know.
There's to do with that.
You're not very bohemian either, are you? This house is so... It's so tidy and well organized.
Well, bohemian's a very odd English word. What does it mean? Usually it means that you sit on the floor and eat baked beans out of a cardboard box.
It just means you're careless in your ways, I think, and yes.
Well, I'm fairly careless in my ways. I have a very good staff who look after me and make sure that I'm not too careless. I suppose that's what it amounts to.
This place means a lot to you, doesn't it? It's very much lived in, this house.
Well, my home means everything to me, really, which is rather a nuisance, because I've always had roots, I've always wanted to have roots, and I think it's essential in this job particularly that you don't spend all your life in hotel bedrooms or living temporarily. As now we do so much location work, and I'm sort of the king of location, or was. It's important to have somewhere behind you that you know is your home and is running and is geared for you when you come back to it.
Do you find that your friends are in the film world? Do you have friends outside that?
Certainly outside it, yes. I haven't got a great many friends. One has a lot of acquaintances, naturally, but most of my chums are in the business because, well, we all talk about the same thing, but a lot of people are outside it, which is much more pleasurable.
Just one other point I'd like to make about Doctor's Dilemma. This was directed by Anthony Asquith. Yes. Really the first big-name director you had worked with. Do you like a strong director?
I think it's absolutely essential for me to have a strong director. I can't work without a director. And I know the results the moment I see the picture.
But you have a strong personality yourself. Do you find you argue about how scenes should be done?
Yes, I try to. But, you know...
Who wins when you argue?
Oh, dear Lord, that depends very much on the director. Very often it's an unhappy compromise.
Yes.
Usually, if the director is the sort of director he should be, he wins, which is his job to win.
Yes.
You know.
Soon after this, you went to Hollywood, although they'd been trying to get you ever since 1954 when you were offered a part in a biblical epic called The Egyptian.
The Egyptian, yes.
Were you happy in Hollywood?
Yes, I was very happy in Hollywood. I absolutely loved it. It was the most exciting 6 months' work. It was murder to do, and as such, the film, to me, was a disappointment.
This film, of course, was the Life of Liszt Song Without End.
Yes.
And opposite you was starring Capucine, the French actress.
That's right.
How did you feel about that part? It was a big, lavish spectacular with a full treatment.
Well, I felt simply when I got the script, I was very ill at the time with pneumonia and was on my way out. And they thought it might be a good idea, the doctors, for me to read the script to sort of try and revive an interest, you know. And I realized, even at that very low state, that this was a part that I'd never be offered in this country, because it had everything in it. You know, it was the most enormous cell-starring role, yes, which was possibly its mistake, I don't know. But also, as you said, it was the full musical lavish. It cost something like $3.5 million. It took 6 months to make. And it was the most marvelous introduction to Hollywood because I didn't terribly want to go, so I went on my terms, which was excellent, and worked with, as it turned out, George Cukor, who was one of the greatest directors in Hollywood, who took over the film when Charles Villor unfortunately died after 3 weeks shooting. And that was the most enormous experience I think I've ever had. I remember a lot of publicity surrounded that film. There was, of course, the publicity surrounding you and the star, Capucine, but I don't want to talk about that. How do you feel generally about publicity? I suppose as a film star, open and close quotes, you lap it up, do you? No, I obviously lap it up. Publicity... I should thought, film star as distinct from an actor who lives on publicity. Oh, film star, awful phrase. Anyway, I can't argue that. I'm sorry, you're labelled with this. Yes, I know. You are the only star. Ever since Jean Harlow, I think, and Clara Bow. So we're all tarred with the same brush. Yeah. Publicity, of course, is essential. If you make a picture, it costs a great deal of money. You've got to have it known that it's on the floor because somebody's got to go and see it. I think publicity is all right as long as it doesn't intrude on your private life. I think that's nothing to do with the public at all whatsoever. Difficult to draw the borderline in some cases, isn't it? Well, if you keep your publicity to do with your film and your performance and the things that happen on and around the floor, that's enough. Are you going back to Hollywood? If they asked me, certainly, I wouldn't hesitate. It's got to be the right, the right thing. You've nothing against Hollywood as such? Oh, heavens no. It's the most wonderful place in the world to do your work. Really? I think it's the only place to do your work. Yes. This is not the view of every English actor. Well, you know, Hollywood is you either accept it, or you don't accept it, or it doesn't accept you. There are three standards. Yeah. I accepted it, unfortunately they accepted me. I loved it there. It's a bit like Golders Green in New Delhi, all rolled into one. So many people are fleeing from Hollywood, you would like to go back? Well, I don't think people are fleeing from it, are they? Oh, perhaps they are, I don't know. Yes, the trend is, you know, they tend to move out. I think you would flee from living there. Any sensible person would flee like hell from there. But you couldn't do better than to work there. I'd like to move on now to your latest film, Victim. This is basically a blackmail story, a detective story, and on that level alone, let it be said, it's a very exciting, suspenseful picture. But what gives it its peculiar bite and depth is the fact that it's concerned with homosexuals. Yes. It was your picture. How would you briefly describe your part? It's difficult to describe it briefly, but briefly in a sort of capsule. Yeah. It's the story, as you know yourself, as you saw it the other day, of a barrister who's happy to marry it, but who is finally blackmailed and destroyed by a previous relationship with a man which could or could not have been a homosexual one. Yes. You must feel very strongly in this subject to risk losing possibly a large part of your following by appearing in such a bitterly controversial film. I don't think so, no. You see, I told you a little while ago that the parts were not always so good. Yeah. This is a marvelous part, and in the film I think that is tremendously important because it doesn't pull any punches. It's quite honest. It isn't, I don't have to use any old tricks for the fans. It's a straightforward character performance, which is what I've been You're made to look much older than you are in the picture. I play my own age, which is 40, but I have to look rather older than that because you don't look 40, let it be said. No, let it be said. But I don't think that everybody said, oh, why